So, Happy Endings by Alice Winters is an urban fantasy romance centered around the characters of Miles and Havoc. Havoc is Miles' demon, while Miles is a magician. And essentially, the two of them are faced with an enemy from their past that seems to have returned to life. And so, Miles and Havoc have to basically gather the local leaders together to try and defeat this menace one more time. And yeah, this book's pretty alright. There's nothing really outstanding about it, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's pretty entertaining. The characters of Havoc and Miles in particular have a really funny banter, and I like the humor that Alice Winters has in her voice. I just feel like this has sort of been done before and done quite a lot, and it's unusual for me to say that for a book that is essentially in the romance genre, but yeah, there's just something about this book that doesn't really have me wanting to come back to it. The characters first, I actually quite like the main two leads. I think they sort of work together as a pair. They are supposed to be the main romantic love interests in this book. They have sort of been friends or sort of frenemies for about 200 years now. But after Miles is sort of badly injured, Havoc sort of has this realization moment where he realizes that he does have feelings for Miles, and that's sort of pursued. It's a little rushed. You don't really get a sense of the existing relationship of these characters before it turns into something else. Because they've had such a long-standing relationship as well, it feels very out of the blue that all of a sudden they have this romantic connection that they're going to pursue. It feels like Alice Winters wants to carry out a much longer story than what's in these pages, and she has sort of forced this much larger story into a smaller bit of media in terms of like what she's trying to sell, like romance novels and fantasy romance, all this stuff. They are expected to be a certain length and to be of a certain quality, and I feel like she has a lot of ideas with this series that she doesn't really get to pursue properly because of the genre that it's placed in. Because Havoc and Miles actually have a very interesting relationship. Miles sort of has Havoc enslaved to him as just a condition of having Havoc be his demon. That is an element of the magical binding that keeps the two of them together. And there is some hesitancy from Havoc and resentment from Havoc because of that. Like, those are deeper elements of like fantasy worlds or sort of world building that could be delved into in a much more interesting way. It's similar to how other fantasy books have sort of similar different abilities and different powers and conditions upon magic and stuff. That's it just feels like it's a bit out of place in this book that is supposed to be quite light and not supposed to be too serious. I just thought it was an odd choice. It feels like she wants to go for different tones within this book, and she's not quite sure where to settle. The plot is also sort of out of place for a first book. It's the return of an old sort of enemy, and this old enemy is pretty bloody evil. I'll not go into details or spoil it for anybody, but it feels like an end of a large series villain, and instead we get we just get elements that feel like they don't quite belong in a first entry or belong in a standalone novel. And yeah, I just find it very confused. The romance in this as well is kind of I don't know, it's just not really done to the best that it could be. Again, I feel like Alice Winters has an idea here that is just being shoehorned into this format, and it's not really working out. It's bizarre. It's really hard for me to sort my feelings on this book because so much of it confuses me in the way that it's written and the elements that she introduces and the themes and the parts of the sort of world building that she does commit to just feel out of place in it, and it creates this tonal inconsistency and this sort of lacking of something that you can't really figure out as a reader. Yeah, I'm not going to say much more else on this book because I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I wasn't bored. It was very entertaining to read. I particularly like the banter between the two main characters, and there's some really fun side characters as well. I just feel like the main core elements of this book are a little lost, and a little bit like Alice Winters didn't quite know what she wanted to do with this. But yeah, I could be wrong. This is just my opinion, but yeah, it's not something that I would love to return to. I would give this a 3 out of 5. It's not outright bad, it's just sort of confused, I feel, and I would say that 3 out of 5 would be a confused rating for me. But yeah, that's it. I'm just going to move on to a different series from this. I'm just not loving it. Yeah, tried it, didn't work out. So I just continue on with my Psycho series instead.